My name is Nicholas Bell, and I'm here speaking with Michal Blaško for his directorial debut, Victim, which is Slovakia's official selection in the category of Best International Feature for the
95th Academy Awards.
And you also just premiered out of the Venice Film Festival in September. So congratulations on both of those. Welcome and thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I think I want to get out of the way. Something I'm sure you've had to been asked questions a lot about is the fact that you were deep in post-production when the war in Ukraine broke out, which of course your film centers on two Ukrainian immigrants in a small Czech border town, and how that kind of automatically made your film kind of a period piece or semi-historic. And I wanted to tie that into, you had mentioned a poll about the minority that Czechs hate the most being Ukrainians. And due to the war, have you noticed any kind of lessening in how blatant that hostility is?
Yeah, when the war started, we were almost in the last stages of the post-production. So we had like no opportunity to change something in the story. So what was possible for us to have there was, in the beginning, for example, some kind of time title to be specific that this happened before the war. But we realized that it could raise more questions than answers, so we skipped it. Well, the situation in Central Europe, and more specifically countries that are surrounded by Ukraine, for example, for the first 1 or 2 months since the war started, there was big empathy towards the Ukrainians, and you could feel that it somehow connected the people. But after these 2 months, something changed again, and people started to be jealous, for example, towards Ukrainians, that they are gaining more attention than people at home, and their problems are bigger than our problems, and somehow the situation which is presented in the film happened again. So I was really afraid that somehow the film will be historical, because people now don't travel from Ukraine to Czech Republic or Slovakia because of documents, but because they are escaping from the war. But the theme and the question of minorities and their position in Central Europe it's still the same. It's still the same.
Which is, of course, incredibly unfortunate. But I remember hearing you speak about that poll, which was, shocking to hear that is so, obvious. But that made me think of some of the visual metaphors you use in the film, because it's about pitting two minority groups against the Czech majority, which would be Ukrainians and Roma. And the first comes early on when there's water leaking into Irina's apartment. And to me, from the Roma neighbor upstairs, and it made me think of kind of minority status being fluid and spilling onto, it's like a trickle down effect almost. And then it kind of happens again with her car, with the child ripping a hole through the plastic she's put over the broken window, and, like her shattered credibility. And I was wondering if you want to speak on that and how purposeful that was. Am I reading into it?
Well, the situation with the car is a little bit different than the situation with the flat, because we spent a lot of time in this big apartment buildings when we were trying to get as much information about how these communities live there, because they're quite specific, these parts of the cities. There are, for example, 4 or 5 in Czech Republic, and they were built in 70s or 80s, and people from lower social groups were moved there, and they lived there actually, and the government didn't help these communities. So these buildings, they're old, and like you can hear everything from the floor 1 until floor 7. So these kind of problems like leaking water, they are very common there. So it's not unusual. So I wanted to have this situation which can be a little bit common in these communities, but her reaction towards the kids from her neighbor is a little bit not adequate. It's really strict, but it's because she's under really stressful situation. And the situation with the car, we since the beginning we had the situation with the broken windows, but the situation with the boy and with how he's like doing this little haul, it came out really really. I think it was shortly before we started the shooting. Really like the idea for them to be in the car and have no dialogue and just this emotion where she's looking towards the boy and somehow she realizes that she's connected with them. And that's also part of her emotional story where she like changes her mind to go to the march and to go public.
Which reminds me, this you've been crafting this story for quite a while. It was you said it originated in your second year of film school, and of course has since gone through other moderations as more collaborators have come on board. Can you talk about how your screenwriter came on board, because the idea was generated by you, and then your collaboration with your usual cinematographer, Adam Mock? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was in my second year of school, I had a short film which was premiered in San Sebastian, and I was contacted by Jakub Viktorin, the producer, if there is a story that I would like to develop as a feature film. And I had this idea, and he wasn't really like into it. And then a year later, I was lucky, and I had a film in Cannes in the Cine Fondation section. And during this year, I had time to think more about the story. And I came again to Jakub and presented him the story, and he liked it. He thought that there's this balance between the intimate story and the individual against society story. But we both knew that I was probably not ready to write a feature film because I'm not a writer. And he had experience with the other Jakub Medvedsky, who is a scriptwriter with his previous films. So we got together, and the collaboration was very close for the first 2 years. And then Jakub started to work alone. I was watching it a little bit from the distance. And then a Romanian writer, Razvan Radulescu, who is a collaborator with Cristian Mungiu, he helped us. He gave us like the final touches, and he polished the whole story. And while we were preparing the script, and it took us almost 4 or 5 years, for this whole time, I was thinking with Adam how we should visualize this story. And we came with the idea to have each scene shot with one shot, and not to have like edits during these shots, and to have a dialogue like one detail, wider shot. And it gave us chance to have the fluidity in the story. And because it took us 5 years to prepare the film, we had the chance to record the film with us a year before we started the real shooting. So we had the whole film shot where I was Irina, the architect was Igor, and we knew from where to where we will watch the scene, and it helped us a lot with what we really need and what we don't need.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually kind of the silver lining of that time that we all had to go through. It's interesting bringing up Mungiu, who I know that your cinematographer had referenced 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days as a kind of a visual template. Thematically, I thought a lot of Mungiu's Graduation.
Yeah.
And then the film, because of Irina and her relationship to her son and what she's doing, I thought a lot of Child's Pose, actually. Were there any other inspirations? And The Tribe has come up, I know, too.
Yeah. Graduation was really inspiring for us, but what we really want, in the beginning we were inspired a lot by Mungiu, but when Razvan Radulescu was with us on board, we were a little bit afraid not to fall into the same category of visualization and storytelling. So we were a little bit skeptical about the form, but then we realized that it's really written, and we wrote it since the beginning in this style. So of course it has something common with the Romanian New Wave, but I think it goes more with the characters. For me, Graduation and 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days is more about the small situation which becomes like very big. And with us, we wanted really to be more with Irina and Igor, and to have the other storyline, whereas like individual against the society, to be equal, not to have one or another to be more.
Yeah, I didn't think it was, copycatting in any way. I felt very unique in its own way. And I think for me, I was reading the visualization, which is very bleak, as kind of that's Irina's interior. That's her world and how it looks to her, which is felt very steeped in that, which I really liked. Do you want to talk about the casting of Irina, because the film's success is really central on Vita Smachelyuk's performance?
It took us a long time to find her. Actually, we were in Kiev many times for many castings, and we were not sure if we can find anyone, because we were not happy. But in the end, we received the video. It was a self-tape from Vita, because she moved to Hamburg, to Germany, and we found her really interesting. And then we met personally, and we started to think that this could be really her, even though she didn't have much acting experience. And with the boy, he's Ukrainian, he lives in Prague, but he doesn't speak Czech. The only language he speaks is English, and Ukrainian, like so-so, 50-50. So both of them had difficulties with the language. Vita, for example, was learning for a year and a half the Czech language before we started the shooting. Her character speaks half of the film in Czech, half of the film Ukrainian, and she was not able to speak Czech. So for a year and a half, she had her personal coach who was teaching her, and when we were shooting, we were able to speak Czech. And the other actors, they are Czech, and there's a mixture of actors and non-actors.
I noted, as an English speaker reading the subtitles, it's very impressive how she has to navigate, 3 different sets of language. That, I think people, when you're just reading something, can kind of forget that that's a lot of work. I like that the title, the original Obet, the title Victim is the international title, but that word also means sacrifice. And I really like how that is a shadow in both the title and the narrative itself.
Actually, we were thinking for a week, because as you said, Obet in Slovak means victim or sacrifice. And we were really playing with the word sacrifice, but no, we thought victim is more playing with how we wanted to play in the script with who is the victim. Who is the victim in the beginning is not the victim in the end. And the position of victims is really changing during the film. So then we realized that it should be victim, even though sacrifice would work somehow, but it's not the name. It's not.
I think I think victim actually does work very well because within the film, when Irina goes to the media and gives her interview, that's the point of no return, where after that she learns the truth about her son's injury, and it's a couple things going on where victim becomes victimizer, really, and also how they have to remain in the status of victimhood, and how it's kind of a privilege to be a victim. And I think that goes back to our first question at the beginning of this interview, about how people get tired, like there's a sell-by date on being a victim as well, where people don't want to acknowledge it after a certain amount of time. So I think that works really well.
Thank you.
I think, and also it's kind of a culmination of themes from previous short films like Fear and Atlantis 2003, also a television series you did called Suspicion. And I know that you're working on another feature at the moment called Cowgirl. I don't know if you wanted to share.
It's a Western situated in a Slovakian-Poland border. And this area is a little bit specific because because it's a country. There are a lot of animals and people working with them, and this part of Slovakia is still somehow very much connected to America. You can find a lot of American flags, a lot of people who are dressed as cowboys, and it's a very organic and natural part of this part of Slovakia. And there is a very popular sport which is called horse cutting, and it's situated only in this part actually. And Jakub Medvedsky, who is the writer of Victim, he was born there. He lived there until he was 19. And this story is for him very close because in the story you can sense a lot of moments, situations, and emotions that he lived. He's writing from his own experience, and for me the story is very strong. It's about a 14-year-old girl who somehow realizes that the world around her is not that nice and clean as she thought it is, and it's really strong for me. So if everything goes well, we should start the shooting in 2024 summer.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Congratulations on Victim and its distinction as being Slovakia's submission. And I look forward to Cowgirl and other work as we go forward.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.